success. And it was all about social media.
We all spokes of a wheel, so it's a system that works. It's not no individual that does anything. So.
Okay, so how do you think, as Prateek said, that it is undermining democracy? Is it really real, or are we just making...
Well, I believe our democracy is something much more larger than what can be undermined only by fake news. Fake news is one of the factors, but it's part of a larger uh, ailment that our democracy is having to face. So the larger problem is that we are living in a society in which divisive politics is what is leading the way and what is being used to get into power and keep others out of power. Fake news is just a tool for them. Fake news is not the ultimate weapon. Fake news is just one of the tools that they use.
Yeah, and in our research, I'm sure you'll go back and read those 70 pages because Shantu will be very upset.
Oh, of course I have.
You know, yeah. One of the findings is that actually people in India, they don't like sharing the news, the messages which might incite violence. That is one of the findings. Now, you may disagree, but you know, that is how the research has shown. Phoebe, how have you looked at this issue and what's your take on it?
Sure. So my previous job was at Full Fact, which is a UK fact-checking organisation, and they recently published a report that I worked on before I left. And one of the things we were looking at in terms of whether misinformation or disinformation is harming democracy was the reach. What possible reach could these kinds of misleading memes, images be having? So if you think about the UK population, how many, or let's take the Indian population, how many of them actually have internet access? It's something like 200 million, I think. You guys would obviously be better placed to know than me. How many people are using WhatsApp? So kind of trying to cut down out of the entire population who is actually the target audience here. And then the other things we were looking at was the harms, the possible harms. So one of them is kind of distrust, undermining belief in the democratic system. Other ones could be economic damage, risk to life, as you know, the very upsetting video that we just saw, risk to public health, which is a big problem in Nigeria. You have lots of WhatsApp messages going around kind of claiming that this or that can cure cancer, that you need to take this particular vial of medicine to, you know, make sure that you don't catch anything. People being wrong on the internet is another possible harm, but how much damage does that really do? I would say it does damage when it's people being wrong on a mass scale, but where is the tipping point between, you know, your mother or your father saying something that's wrong, and then, you know, hundreds of thousands of people believing something that's not true? And those kinds of beliefs are formed over time. I think it would be arrogant of us all to think that one single fact check, and I say this coming from, you know, the world of fact checking, or one single item of content could do a lot of damage on one scale. Perhaps for a short period of time it could, but I think what we need to be looking at is how beliefs about religion, healthcare, immigration, you know, things like teen pregnancy are being formed over a long period. And there has been work that's been done on that by Ipsos Mori, the pollsters. Their ex-research director, he's now at King's College in London, just published a book called The Perils of Perception, which I think everybody in this room should read. And it covers, I think, about 40 countries. They did hundreds of thousands of interviews.
It's more about perception. That is more...
I think that's one of the possible threats to democracy is perceptions, as well as things like economic damage, undermining belief in democratic systems and so on.
Sure. So, of course, you know, like as an ordinary citizen, as a journalist, one thing that, you know, what does fake news do is it is making you feel distrust the information, and in that sense you are corroding the circuits of democracy, right? But coming back to your frown at that comment that I was making and picking up from what Phoebe was saying, it is more about the perception than it is really the reason for worry for us, especially in India?
The first thing that I would want to point out is that we keep talking about internet reach, but as you would have seen in the case of child kidnapping rumors, it is not necessary for a person to have WhatsApp to get the information. You know, in many rural pockets, the information also travels by word of mouth. So the perception that just because the internet doesn't reach